Hello, Profit Hackers. I'm Jeremy Lott, the Chief Visionary for Foundation Accounting and Consulting. I owned a construction company for about 15 years before making a change to accounting because my accountants sucked. My goals are to simplify accounting for construction company owners, fuel your profits, level up your cash flow, and help you grow in a financially responsible way. So let's go. Hello, and welcome back to the Contractors Profit Hack Show. I'm Jeremy Lott with Foundation Accounting and Consulting, and I am here today to continue our discussion about bidding. So if you remember back, the 4 steps for bidding are: number 1, you bid a process. Number 2, you figure out all of your costs for each step in that process. Number 3, you mark up your costs. And number 4, you compare it to market. Okay, so we're going to talk about process today. So to introduce this, I want to be a little bit vulnerable and share some details with you about my life that have been some struggles for me in the past, right? I found out last year, I'm 48 years old, and I just found out last year that I'm autistic. I've always had, different quirks or problems, but I have learned different processes and different things to apply to different scenarios that help me to be able to do what's called masking, which means hiding any abnormalities that I have, right? For instance, I had a really hard time looking people in the eye for a long time. And early on in my business career, back when I had my landscape company, I spoke with a lady that was a business coach, and she was helping me to understand sales. And she spent a whole session on eye contact and spoke about that and said there are people that are really good with it and there are people that don't like it as much. And so she said that you need to observe the other person, and if they keep eye contact, then you keep eye contact. If they look away occasionally, then you look away occasionally. If they just don't look at you at all, well, then you only look at them occasionally, right? So it's mirroring. And now every time that I speak with somebody, my brain thinks, okay, are they looking at me? And then I mirror what they're doing, right? So that's masking. That's an example of masking. But what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about processes, because processes are super important for me to be able to function in the real world. Autistic people often have a hard time starting things. And I have a long history of building up a clientele and then not completing all the work and then losing everybody. And I followed that cycle over and over and over again. And we've had some real struggles over the years because of that. Recently, like 3 years ago, in talking with my therapist, who I started meeting with, she pinpointed immediately the problem I was facing. And she told me that what I need to do is every time I have a project, rather than looking at the project and saying, I've got to complete this project, instead to sit down with sticky notes and write out very minuscule steps, right? So for instance, I don't have to go do bookkeeping for a certain client. Instead, what I have to do very first is walk to the office. Second, sit down. Third, wiggle the mouse and turn on the computer. Get the computer awake. Right? Fourth, pull up QuickBooks, and so on and so forth, right? I follow these mini steps, and as I complete each one, I can take that Post-it note off for each of those steps, right? It has been life-changing for me, and it has helped me build the successful, thriving business that I have now. And it has helped me to be able to help more people, which is super important to me, right? But anyway, processes, like I said, are very important to me. And the reason that we start our bidding with focusing on processes is because we don't want to miss things. We want to get to a point where our whole process is documented down as a list, and each step in that process is written down, and we can get as detailed as we want. For instance, a plumber who is, well, I'm going to use an electrician example, okay? So an electrician will win the job, and then that's where we're going to start our process, from where we won the job, okay? So they're going to have to purchase materials. They're going to have to schedule the guys out. They're going to have to travel to the job site. Once he's on the job site, he's going to have to speak with the client and get more details there. They're going to have to unload their truck and their equipment and their materials to the job site. They are going to have to mark out the job. And then it continues on from there. But you get the idea. I'm going to write down each of those steps, because if I know that the client is very talkative or has a lot of questions, I want to factor in more time for talking to the client. If it is farther away than jobs that we normally do, I need to factor in more time for getting to the job site, right? There are a lot of different variables throughout the process that can drastically change your costs to do the job. So we want to make sure we document that whole process. And then when we bid, we're going to follow that process. And each step, we're going to go down and we are going to look at that step, right? So for instance, ordering parts. Hopefully from my takeoff, I have a list of parts, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out who is going to be doing that project, the ordering, and how much they get paid per hour, right? So you're going to get that process all figured out and all put together. And then once you have that process put together, we're going to move on to the next step, where we're working on the costs for each step in that process, right? So that's all I have for you today. That is the details on the first step of the bidding process. First, we bid a process. Second, we figure out the costs for each step in that process. Third, we mark it up. And fourth, we're going to compare it to the market. So next, we're going to talk about figuring out those costs. So I will talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening. If you found this episode helpful, please like and subscribe for weekly episodes to help you fuel your profit, level up your cash flow, and finance your growth. Until next time, go enjoy some green M&Ms and protect that cash.